right. I think just in the sake of respecting everyone's time, we can get started. And as people come in, we'll just let them join us. So very grateful tonight to have everyone who has taken time out of their week to join us. As I'm sure you're well aware, we have a important election coming up next week, and ACE is always, coming at things from a standpoint of thinking critically, and making sure that you are informed of all aspects of the decision that needs to be made, and giving you as much information as you can to form those decisions and opinions that you might have. For us as childcare operators, and most of us as parents, childcare is a big deal right now. It's a very important issue as we move to making a decision about who will be our leader for the next 4 years or so. And tonight, what we want to do is make sure that, again, we provide you with as much information to make a decision of, your choice that fits your family's values and really supports your child in the future of childcare. So with that being said, welcome to our Parents' Night, our stakeholder night. I'm sure there's a lot of educators and operators here as well. My name is Crystal Churcher. I am the chair of ACE Alberta chapter and the co-chair of our national ACE Child Care Coalition. ACE is a group of operators, essentially representing and advocating for operators of childcare of all kinds of models: nonprofit, for-profit, home-based, franchise, small owner operators, all of us here in one place, making sure that we're all supported and informed. And before we get going tonight, I think just a little bit of housekeeping. We are using a Teams platform tonight. We are going to be trying to get to the chat as we're going through the presentations. So if you have things that pop up throughout the presentation, feel free to pop them in the chat. At the end, we will have an open discussion where you're more than welcome to put your hand up. We can unmute you, and you can talk to us directly, talk to our amazing panelists that have gifted us with their time and expertise tonight. And we can have questions and just open discussion about how we're all feeling about this, and make sure that everyone leaves in a good place. So until then, please keep yourself muted. We're going to mute you if you do unmute just because of the background noise. Again, use the raise your hand feature. Let's be thoughtful and kind and respectful to each other. I'm expecting and I'm hoping that we'll hear a lot of different opinions and some real discussion tonight. But I want it to be respectful and kind. We're all here as volunteers. None of us are government funded in ACE, believe it or not. And we're just here because we want to make sure that we're doing our best to support our sector and the parents that choose us as operators to take care of your kids. So let's be kind and respectful to all of us here tonight, and to our, again, amazing people that showed up for our panel. And be patient. Again, we're doing the best we can. We're not all super tech savvy here, but we will do our best to make sure that we get to all of the questions if we can, and to the chat. So with that being said, I'm going to hand things over to our lovely Catherine Babawal, who is our ACE secretary, and is going to start the meeting off for us tonight. So thank you, Catherine.
Thank you, Crystal. Like Crystal said, my name is Catherine Babawal, and all of us that sit on the board for the Association of Childcare Entrepreneurs are operators. I'm also in Alberta, and I assist with the national level of ACE as well. I have a daycare and an out-of-school care program in Sherwood Park, so I am very happy to be welcoming so many parents nationwide to answer some of your questions and to offer you information about the $10 a day program. Also some perspective for what it's like on the ground for us. So thank you for joining us tonight. We know that we're all on the same team. We've got parents, caregivers, and operators, ECEs as well, I'm sure, on here. We're all working together because we care about those kids, right? We want to make sure that they're good for the future. In tonight's discussion, I think it's important for us to be keeping in mind that the discussion about childcare is not just about in the now, in today. We want to be making sure that the choices that are being made by the policymakers that we choose in our government roles are going to be ensuring that there's a foundation for success in the future, and that we need stable. We need it to be high quality. We need a program that is going to be meeting the needs of diverse, different family makeups. Recognizes that parents need to be able to choose and decide what's best for their kids. So this election, I think, is going to play a big role in what it is the future of childcare looks like for Canada moving forward for many generations. So tonight as intentions, we want to help parents as our highest priority gain a deeper understanding of what each of the platforms policies, promises are specific to the Affordable Childcare Program that has been rolled out in Canada, the Canada-wide Early Learning and Childcare, CWELC is how we pronounce that abbreviated. It's the $10 a day program. We are going to be primarily focusing on the Conservative, Liberal, and the NDP party replies to questions that our association posed of them about childcare. We have some excellent experts and stakeholders who are here to speak to you and offer perspectives and insight. We have opportunity to be discussing solutions, and we want for parents to have an opportunity to learn, become more informed, so that the future of childcare under each party is going to be properly understood. What does it mean if you vote for this one, or this one? What will it be looking like down the road? So the CWELC program is fairly complex. It's got lots of great intentions. Nobody on ACE would ever disagree with that ever. Let's make childcare affordable for parents, 100%. That's why operators, we signed in and said, yeah, let's do this for the parents. There have been some bumps in the road on the rollout, though, and parents and operators predominantly have noticed that there's a lot of challenges that have come up. And in particular, it's important to highlight at this point that there have been some promises made relevant to access, equity, quality that can be brought up in tonight's discussion. So we want you guys to know the facts, to really know the information so that you feel like you can be informed and make some critical thinking decisions about which party is going to be the best for what it is you think are your highest values for children, not just yours right now, but those down the road in the future for the whole of Canada as well. We want to make sure that we're properly advocating for a system that truly supports all children, all parents. And tonight, like Crystal said, we're volunteering our time. Our association is not receiving any funding from any form of government. We are truly nonpartisan. We are here intending to ensure that we allow for parents to properly understand what these decisions mean and hopefully come to a place where there's going to be good solutions in place for children. This presentation is the perspectives just of our association. We are a non-for-profit organization. Like I said, we don't receive any government funding. We are nonpartisan. We represent the values, experiences, and beliefs of childcare operators and stakeholders across Canada. And the information that we provide tonight is not legal advice, nor is it any form of official government communication. And for authoritative details, please refer directly to official party resources or consult your appropriate legal counsel. All righty, here's our agenda intentions. Introduce you to ACE, find out a little bit about what our priorities are as far as advocacy, review the Canada-wide Early Learning and Childcare $10 a day program, give you some summaries, what were the intentions and where are we at, a little bit of a report card on how we've done for progress according to the promises made. We've got a great panel of experts. There's some parents, experts, stakeholders, program operators that are going to be talking. Then we have the questions that we posed of the different parties, and we'll be able to share all of the answers with you. Crystal's going to be doing that part, walking us through each of the questions and reviewing the answers per party. And at the end, questions and open discussion. We do really want to hear from parents. We're here volunteering our time, intending to offer information, provide you with perspective of what it's like being on the ground running these programs. I assume grand majority of parents on here are parents who have children in childcare. So we're speaking on behalf of ACE represents 160,000-ish spots across Canada in our membership. So like we've said already, Crystal did allude to this, we do have operators in all forms of business models in the Association of Childcare Entrepreneurs. What we came to realize very quickly is that the $10 a day program offers limitations upon all operators to a point that it renders everybody, regardless of business model, into a position where it doesn't matter what your business model is. We all need to be advocating and supporting each other. Really good teamwork. So we have got everything possible. It doesn't matter if you are not for profit or for profit, you can belong to our association. We have got day homes, daycares, preschools, and out of school care programs as well. Often those operators have one of those other 3 programs that do have access to the funding. We don't get any funding from government. We are completely run by membership fees from our members nationwide. So ACE was started in Alberta, and we have since expanded across Canada. We represent 16% of Canada's eligible $10 a day spots in our 160,000 childcare spots in our membership. So our priorities for ACE is we want to make sure that we're advocating for an equitable, accessible childcare system. It upholds quality, and it ensures that parent choice remains something of importance within the parameters that the government is talking about. We truly, as operators, believe that parents definitely should have a perspective and be allowed to choose what program best meets their family's values and ideals. So we're working to make sure that all families have the access to childcare that is best for them. And we also support our operators. We make sure that they can remain sustainable, viable, and that they are running high quality programs. We do have high expectations that our members operate in integrity for the best of children. So we collaborate quite a lot with policymakers and stakeholders in the community. And basically we amplify the voice of operators. We amplify the voice of parents, often who do not have a voice at all. And with the help of our public relations firm that we also employ through our membership. We have a couple, one in Alberta, one in Ontario. We navigate through the government relations and make sure that we can get a seat at the table and have our voices heard. So starting out, we want to just make sure that everybody's on the same page for understanding enough about the Canada-wide Early Learning and Childcare Program. It started out in 2021. The federal government launched it, promising a universal, affordable, and high-quality childcare system. The key pillars of the program are that we will hit a cost of $10 a day by 2026. Coming up here, there will be 250,000 new licensed spaces created in that time. We will be supporting for early childhood educator wages and training to be aligned for the quality piece. As far as inclusion is concerned, that mostly means that it's about a universal system. It's not specific more so to, sometimes the words inclusion mean relevant to kids who have extra needs and things like that. It's not that so much. It's more so that there's diversity included in this program, that we are reaching out to the Francophone families, to the Indigenous families, and everybody should be receiving it equally, regardless of where they live and how much money they make. It's a truly universal system is what was promised, with a mission to give all children a strong start in life and support parental workforce participation, especially for women. So the investment to this program was an offer of $30 billion over the 5 years, 2021 to 2026. And it has recently been extended, another $36.8 billion that will lead us into another 5-year term that goes till 2031. It's important to note, though, that the provinces of Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Ontario have not agreed to sign into this next 5-year extension. predominantly with concerns about gross underfunding being the basis for that decision. We can answer more questions on that later if that's of interest to parents. The fee reductions that were promised was that fees would be cut by 50% by the end of 2022, and that we would hit this $10 a day average in the majority of provinces by 2025. The targeted space creation, 250,000 more spaces, only predominantly in the not-for-profit public sector, not the for-profit sector, the private operators. At the moment, we're at about 150,000 spaces that have been created since 2025. That's still a good chunk left to go. All right. Just kind of did a little report card. So we pulled a bunch of statistics. Let's go through them. How has this gone? Access since CWELC's implementation. The number of children under the age of 5 in childcare actually fell by 118,000 between 2019 and 2023. That's a decrease of 8.5%. Ontario, the proportion of children in childcare was 48% in 2023, but it was 54% in 2019. 46.4% of parents said they found it hard to find childcare in 2023. That is an increase from 36.4% in 2019. And only 1 in 3 children in Ontario has access to CWELC-funded childcare. Childcare deserts, that's actually a term that means that there's insufficient access to programs in varying areas. Often it's rural. So we've got 50% of young children that are impacted in Canada. There are 130,000 licensed spaces in BC, but 75% of the children 0 to 12 can't actually get to access them. And then there's a list there of all the childcare deserts per province. All right. And we've got wait lists. Wait lists as well, problematic. 26% of parents of children 0 to 5 years old who were not using childcare reported that their child was on a wait list, and that's an increase from 19% in 2022. Infants are also a concern. 47% of infants were not in childcare because they're on a wait list. That's up from 38% in 2022. The other piece on this, as far as equal access, is that in fact it's 77% of those that are accessing childcare are high-income families versus 41% of low-income families. And then lastly, as far as women in the workforce, the labor force participation rate for women 61.5% in September 2023, but it was 61.7% in 2015. And the employment rate of female youth is on a strong downward trend since February 2023, decline of 4.2%, pretty low. Can we get to the next slide? Oh, there we go. So some of the criticisms that you can see: workforce shortages, limited access, even though the fees are lower, underfunding, which impacts quality, pressure on providers because of underfunding, and uneven implementation across the country. And just as an example, for Alberta, where we live, at the moment, with the remaining days left in this current contract, we would need to have 142 spaces be created per day, every single remaining day in this contract to meet the goals. It's not going to happen.
All right.
Super happy
Thank
to
you.
introduce Crystal.
Thank you so much, Catherine. I know that some people in the chat are questioning the stats, and that's great. I just want to make sure that we're here tonight to answer questions about the election, and we can happily share the sources. They were all sourced on those slides for you after. If you'd like, we can put our email in here, and we'll happily forward them to you. But for now, we're going to hand things over to our panelists that again have agreed to be here tonight to talk to all of us and share their time. The first person that we are very grateful to have here tonight is Peter John Mitchell, who is here from Cardis, who is a lead program director on family policy, and just very grateful to have you here tonight, Peter John. Thank you so much. I'm going to hand it over to you.
Well, thank you very much for having me, and thank you for ACE for this invitation. My name is Peter John Mitchell, and I do work for Cardis, which is a think tank, a nonpartisan research group. We've been working on policy issues in family for a number of years. I've been working in family policy for about 20 years, and I'm speaking with you tonight from the Ottawa area. I want to just look briefly at two questions tonight. One, what does the data tell us about how the implementation of this program is going? And two, are these challenges temporary? Is it really a matter that this program is in the early stages and it's just finding its feet? And should we expect it to improve as it goes along? What should we think about that? So those are the two questions that we'll look at tonight. The presentation has already talked about the 4 pillars of the program, so I don't think I need to review that. But as you probably know, childcare is the domain of provinces and territories, and the federal government is giving money to the provinces with certain expectations attached for that funding. And certainly it pertains to those 4 pillars that we reviewed earlier tonight. So over the last couple of years, I've been looking at the implementation of this program. The provinces and territories have created 2-year action plans for which they set out targets for the money that they're receiving from the federal government, and then allocations of funding for those targets. And those plans are submitted to the federal government, and then the provinces and territories provide annual reviews of how the implementation of the process is going, and those go to the federal government. All this data comes on a delay, as provinces and territories have a certain amount of time to file these reports. So the federal government is collecting this data on how the implementation of the program is going. What we've been doing is collecting those reports. Either some provinces make them publicly available, or we're using Freedom of Information to collect those reports, to collect audited financial statements and other documents that would have that data about how these action plans are rolling out. So I just want to share a little bit about how that implementation is going from the work that we're doing. And we'll be providing a summary report later this year with some of this data that I'll be talking about tonight. We've been able to go province by province, territory by territory for about the first 2 years of the rollout of the program. And that's where we're at in terms of our own study on this program. So when we're looking at it in terms of affordability and parent fees, I think this is where the program has been a success. It certainly has reduced the cost of parent fees within licensed childcare across the country. As we saw in the slides there, the goal is to get to $10 a day average by 2026. Many of the provinces have already reached that goal early. So this does seem to be where there is success. I would note that in some of the smaller sections, smaller regions like Yukon, Northwest Territories, we've seen prices, our parent fees come down quite substantially, but then start to creep up again, but still under that $10 a day mark. Unfortunately, I think with the rapid decline in parent fees, we've also seen an increase in demand as parents have been looking to shift into subsidized forms of care away from non-subsidized forms of care. So that's created certainly pressure on the system, as you're probably aware. In terms of space creation, I think it's already been shown tonight that it's very unlikely that the government program will reach its goal by the end of this year, year 5. Last year, according to Radio Canada, about 38% of spaces have been created. And as you can see, it looks like the numbers have come up. And the promised spaces, number of spaces for this year have come up a little bit since then, but not near the goal. I think the one challenge with talking about space creation and about these numbers is it needs to account also for spaces lost. Now, it's pretty natural within a cycle, within a sector, to see that spaces are created, and then some people we lose spaces either from programs shutting down or from retirements, that sort of thing. But I've been quite shocked at the loss of spaces. So, for example, if we look at Nova Scotia in the first 2 years of their program, they were targeted the creation of 4,000 new spaces. Within the first 2 years, they created about 1,700 spaces, so not quite half the target. At the same time, they had lost a number of daycare centers in between the first and second year of the program, and so when you look at net number of spaces that they created, it was really about 845 spaces, again, with their target being 4,000, because they went from about 332 daycare centers down to about 312 within the first 2 years of the program. We saw in places like PEI, they created 500 spaces within the first 2 years, but they also created a centralized wait list, which was about 2,000 strong by year 3. So again, space creation is not really keeping up with demand. And we'll be releasing in 2 weeks our report on year 2 of the Northwest Territories. And actually what we found there was that there are now fewer spaces after 2 years of the program than there were the day that they signed on to the agreement. So that should be setting off a red light on your space creation dashboard there. That something is up if we're seeing a number of spaces being lost. And so it's important to look at net spaces created. In terms of inclusivity, we talked about that a little bit earlier as well. I think what I've seen looking through the reports and looking through the data is that many of the provinces have ended up deferring, particularly in the first 2 years, deferring funding in this area. So we know that BC deferred some inclusion funding. We've seen in Manitoba that they packaged some of their funding with other funding from other parts of their agreement to create grants, but then after that was only able to spend about 36% of their inclusion funds. After that, we've seen PEI spend 10% of their inclusion funds in year 1, and then about 50% of inclusion funds in year 2. So where I think provinces and territories have been maybe successful on inclusion is putting money into existing programs. I think where they've tried to create new programs, that's been a bit of the challenge. So Nova Scotia created a program to provide free care for 2,000 3-year-olds. And the program was canceled because only 8 children signed up for it. So, and that was a program designed for children, equity-seeking children. So that's been a challenge. The final pillar, of course, was the quality program. And I think really when we boil it down for this agreement, quality really comes down, I think, as it's understood in the agreements as again, wages for ECEs, retention grants, and implementing of wage grids. And I think we have seen wages increase for ECEs. We've seen the implementation of wage grids and cash bonuses to retain ECEs. I've seen in some provinces some indication that this has helped with retention. It's sort of reduced sort of the loss of ECEs from the sector. But I think the question of ECEs in the sector and encouraging people to become ECEs is a bit bigger than just wages. But certainly, I think wages have increased. Also, there's been support for post-secondary training opportunities and that sort of thing as well. I think we'll have to wait and see what happens, just how effective the strategy has been. We'll have to wait a few years to see what happens. But I think, as everyone is aware, there are labor issues within the sector. So I think the most significant finding, however, from our research is just the challenge that provinces and territories have had of actually executing the program, executing the plan, and actually spending the money. So every agreement of the provinces and territories has a clause that allows them to carry over unspent funds from one year to the next. But 8 provinces have sought amendments in their agreement to increase the amount of funding that they can carry over that's unspent from year to year. So 8 provinces have sought at least one amendment, and typically we're seeing the amendments asking for anywhere from 60 to 75% of funding that they receive in a year to be carried over to the next year, and also even higher in some other provinces. Unfortunately, we've seen 4 provinces seek a second amendment to carry over funding. And so I think what we're really seeing is, despite the sort of infusion of cash, provinces and territories have struggled to really be able to spend that money and to be able to be sort of effectively and efficiently using some of the funds. So are these challenges temporary? Is this really just growing pains? Should things start to pick up? This program is modeled after the program in Quebec, which is nearly about 3 decades old now. And if we had more time, we could go through the details of the Quebec program. But as sociologist Sophie Mathieu, who sits on the National Advisory Council of Early Learning and Childcare, writes, quote, "The Quebec model has faced significant challenges, including a lack of spaces, variable but rarely excellent quality of services, under-attendance by children from disadvantaged backgrounds, and access difficulties for children with special needs." As of last fall, the wait list in Quebec was about 34,000 children. Last spring, the Montreal Gazette reported that the Auditor General found that, quote, "nearly 30% of daycares evaluated between 2018 and 2023, including 41% of daycares in 2022-2023, failed the educational quality evaluation prepared for the Ministry of Families." That's 41% of daycares in 2023, 2022, 2023 failed the educational quality evaluation set out by the ministry in Quebec. The Auditor General also found in 2023 that the portion of childcares without qualified workers reached 46%. And Radio Canada has reported that on average, 10 workers leave the sector per day in Quebec. So this is the model that that a program is based on. I think all the same problems that we're seeing across the country remain in Quebec as well. And so I think we have to think deeply about the program and about the way it's structured. I think there's some structural issues with it and some challenges that that need to be thought through. Thank you. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you so much, Peter John. We're going to try and just keep going with the panel. We can use the chat for questions right now, and we'll absolutely open the floor up to you at the end to ask questions. I am now very excited to pass it over to Brianna Morris, who is joining us today as a, in her role as a working mom, also someone who speaks on public policy and has a very diverse background in all of this. So Brianna, I'm going to hand it over to you. Thank you so much for doing this tonight.
Thank you, Krista, for the opportunity. Hi, everybody. My name is Brianna. So I live about 35 minutes outside of Edmonton, Alberta. I have an almost 5-year-old son and a 1.5-year-old daughter. I grew up in Calgary. I always knew I wanted children. I also love school. I attended graduate school at the University of Calgary, so I have a master's degree in political science. I also studied economics, Canadian Constitution, division of powers between the federal and provincial government. And I enjoy working, and but we had our first child, and it wasn't a difficult decision for me to decide I wanted to return to work. So that was in 2021. I was in Sherwood Park at the time, and I started looking at what's out there. I toured at least 4 centers that I recall. They all had a space. They all tried to win me over, showing me their excellent programming. They all had different unique offerings. Some had, 2 afternoon snacks. Another had really generous outdoor space. Another one had a little less outdoor space, but an indoor gym. And as a parent, I remember really appreciating that I had the choice. I knew my son better than anybody and where I thought he would thrive the most. What mattered to me was meeting the people running the center and the people that would actually be caring for my child. And also just the general environment. How did I feel about the environment? And I also did reference checks through social media. So I joined, a parent forum on Facebook, and I'm doing keyword searches. Has anybody talked about this center? What are parents saying we need to look for in daycares? So I really did due diligence. I never thought to ask if the center was private or nonprofit. It just, to be honest, it didn't even cross my mind. That's what wasn't on my mind. But I know in at least 3 of the 4 that I toured, mention of the owner did come up. So they were privately run, and ultimately the one I picked was privately run. Just a few months later, we ended up putting an offer on a place more out in the country. That would have been, I think, like 25 minutes away. So I immediately was like, oh, that's a little far to drive. What's closer in terms of daycares? And there was one in the area. Again, met with the owner. It was the owner herself that toured around, and I was like, this is great. It was a great center, and I'm so grateful to this day that I squeezed in. It was November 2021, and we actually ended up moving in January 2022. And boom, like demand skyrocketed, and there was this huge wait list. And so had it been any later, I don't think we would have made it in, because January 2022 was when the federal government and the Alberta government had signed that agreement, and fees were cut in half. So I was talking with some other moms, and on Facebook, a marketplace, I'm seeing, sadly, like day homes liquidating their toys. They're like, I just can't compete. So all these parents rush to put their kids in daycare. And anecdotally, and you never want to judge individual circumstances, but there was gossip among some moms about it was just cheaper than getting a babysitter a few days a week to put their kids in full-time daycare. So even though they had no intention of studying or working, they were taking that spot. And then you also kind of hear about, oh, this person just moved, or this person left a bad situation and, you know, moved away with their child, and they're struggling to find a space. You're kind of like, ooh, okay, like paying less up front is great, but people that need the space aren't necessarily finding them. So I love our current center, our private center. I also have our daughter, so I put her on the wait list as a sibling, like before she was even born. Today they were looking at chicks, like they had eggs in an incubator, and the kids were all excited to watch like this egg hatching. And I love this center. So when I started hearing about concerns for childcare operators, and my background being public policy analysis and just a generalist consultant, I said, you know, what can I do? What can I do to help out with some of this stuff? And I started digging into it. I attended Crystal's another webinar she did based in Alberta, and I was like, oh my goodness, like so what I learned, and I said, what can I do to help? And here I am. But I guess yeah, my experience in politics, I remember a decade ago, it was all about $25 a day daycare. And now we're at $10 a day daycare, and I'm still seeing parents complain, and I'm seeing parents like flustered with the childcare operators that are trying to deal with what the hand they've been dealt. And so I guess I want to advocate on behalf of these centers who I know work so hard. It's not an easy job. I don't think I could do it. And I say this with like pure admiration. The poopy diapers all day, the amount of sunscreen, putting children on children all day, the homesick children, the sick children, just the physical energy of running around with them all day. Like kudos. And so I, as a working mom myself who wants to be generously compensated for my work, rewarded for my hard work, I feel very strongly the same for the people that look after my children. I want them to receive living wage, to like their job, not feel financially stressed outside of work so that they're, you know, exhausted or have side jobs when they're coming into work. And especially as, again, a working woman, like I'm bothered by the government's discrimination, especially against the private sector. So as noted earlier in the slides, they definitely, there's a focus on opening public and not-for-profit spaces. And I just think the underlying discrimination and the subtle messaging the government is giving with regards to the private centers is just really unfair. And it just, especially as a woman, like most of these, not all of them, but like a lot of these businesses are run by women. So as a woman, I'm just like, this isn't right. I think as parents, whatever we can do to communicate to the government that, yes, we want affordable childcare, but we also want it to be quality childcare, and we don't want to stress out all of our operators dealing with all of this government red tape. And my understanding, and I think our next speaker will get into it, like if you charge parents $15 a day and then the government dictates the extra funding they're going to give the center on top of that, well, how do the operators then deal with an unexpected maintenance issue? How do they give raises to their staff that really deserve it? How do they do their special field trips or projects that I want as a mom for my kid? So I really feel for them, and I'm just so grateful for ACE and for the providers that haven't thrown in the towel. So that's kind of, I guess, my self-interest in being here, because I still want all these centers to operate for my children and for their friends. sorry, I'm trying to remember what else I wanted to say. Pros and cons of these models. So I also have nothing against nonprofit models. My understanding of them is they typically have a board of directors and volunteers. I have served on many boards. Some of them are great, some of them are also dysfunctional. So again, I think it just comes down to let the parents do their due diligence. Nonprofit can be great, for-profit can be great, not one or the other is like the perfect model. And the government should just endorse quality childcare across the board rather than say, like, we only want public or nonprofit daycares. And I mean, again, just personally as a parent, like knowing one owner that I can talk to, that I trust, and I know she's making the decisions, I prefer that over trying to deal with an entire board. But again, nothing against that either. I'm just trying to highlight that there shouldn't be this disparagement and this like distrust of private operators. I think some of them are the most kind, nurturing, creative people that I've ever met. So yeah, I guess so. Ultimately, I just as parents, I encourage us to say to the government, whoever the government is after next week, we don't want just affordable childcare. Like, I don't care how cheap it is. If I don't feel good about the quality of the center, I'm not sending my children. So if the program is about tipping the scales for parents of, will I return to work or will I stay home with my kids? And the government's saying, well, if we lower the cost, then that will tip the scales and women will enter the workforce. If they can't find a space or they're worried about the quality, it's going to tip the scales back anyway, and they're probably not going to enter the workforce. So let's emphasize to the government, yes, affordable childcare, but give us options, give us choice, and don't discriminate against for-profit private providers. I think that's more or less what I wanted to say.
Thank you. I appreciate you saying all of those wonderful things about all the different kinds of childcare operators and your experience as a parent. I think that, you know, something that we can just consider in any conversation around childcare is, as much as we try to figure out exactly how it's going for the sector and what the stats are that are going to work, none of us run our centers the same as the other. Every model of childcare is different. Every center is different. Every day is different in childcare, right? Like, you never have the same day twice. It's an adventure as a childcare operator. So, you know, I think trying to like figure out which system is always going to be the best and looking past it at past stats and numbers to reflect the future in childcare is a double-edged sword. I mean, I'm with you. I think more choice is always best. That's why we're here. More information, more choice for parents to kind of think about before they go to the ballot is always best. What you said, something, this story I just want to share, and then I'm going to pass it over to Ray, is something that just has stood out for me since we started ACE. I get a lot of phone calls from parents, emails and things, and we all are aware that there's a massive accessibility issue with this program right now, and that parents are facing long wait lists. That we don't need to go into that right now, but we had a situation in Alberta this last spring, so about a year ago, where a center was shut down. Horrible things had happened to the children in the center. And I had a call from a parent who had their daughter in the center. And what they said to me was, I don't know what to do. I have been looking for another space for my daughter for 2 years. I'm on every wait list in the whole area, like even, 45-minute commute to the other side of the city. And I still haven't got a space. And I knew there was something happening in the center. I could feel it, but I didn't know what to do, because if I don't take her to daycare, I can't go to work and I can't afford to feed my family. So that, I think, is the reality of why we keep showing up as volunteers and operators to do these kind of things, is because there's always consequences to policy. And I think that the reality of it may not be the same for the same two families, but for families like that, where your loss of access means you've lost your choice, that's the horrible reality for some families, but not for all. This is also working for some families too. And I think that's just, if we can just bring a spectrum of experience here tonight for everyone, then it's a win. And I'll leave it at that. And I'm going to pass it over to our co-chair of our Alberta chapter, Ray Luchuk, who is a childcare operator. He operates both a for-profit and non-profit childcare center and private school in Alberta. Ray also has an extensive financial background, and he is our numbers guy for ACE. So he's going to do a little bit of a kind of update and talk about the actual cost of this program. Again, I mean, these are numbers that we've calculated, and no two centers are the same. So take this as something that is, you know, an informative, insightful, you know, evening for you. If it doesn't align with you and these numbers don't agree with you, go check the internet. You'll probably find alternate numbers too. So I'm going to pass it over to Ray. Whenever you're ready, Ray.
Sorry about that. I'm in my center. My janitors decided they wanted to vacuum outside of my office right now, so I had to stop them. So yes, I treat my staff well. They don't do the clean. I bring in janitors. So yes, I am a for-profit and a not-for-profit. I have two of them, and there is no difference in the quality between one and the other. I see a lot of chat saying that there's a difference in quality. A lot of those stats are older of quality in childcare, and I know of a number of for-profit and not-for-profit that are excellent centers. The model really doesn't have anything to do with the quality. When the cost control framework came out, there was a basis that I tried to find from different governments and different sources what the true cost of childcare is. And I was appalled that this program in the billions rolled out and no government determined what it costs to actually operate a childcare center or how much it costs to provide care for a child. So we undertook that and did our own study, and to provide quality care, which means that you have well-paid ECEs with a pension and a benefits, and you have proper spaces, and you have proper furniture and toys and supplies, and that the people aren't overworked, is that is quality care. And when we went through the numbers, to provide quality care that is universal, which means 100% of the children have access to it, would cost $60 billion. That's 60 billion. That's per year. The government of Canada funded $30 billion over 5 years. So they're proposing to do $9 billion. So if the provinces happen to match the $9 billion that they're spending, that's $18 billion, still $42 billion short to provide quality care that is universal, that every child in Canada would have access to. So, okay, not every child is in childcare as shown in Quebec. So let's use a 67%, which is it ranges between 67 to 75% of Quebec children are in childcare. So let's use a 67%. So if it's universal, then for 67% of the children, that's $40 billion. So the 18 billion from both provincial and federal governments, we're still short 20 some billion dollars in the whole funding of the CWELP program. So no matter what party you're looking at, to roll out the CWELP program at $10 a day is that unless the taxpayers want to chip in with another $40 billion, $42 billion deficit per year, the program isn't sustainable. So how's it operating right now? Well, it's on the backs of the ECEs who have lower wages, don't have universal benefits, pension plans, and it's on the backs of operators, whether it's not for profit or for profit, is that these operators are not making a profit, and they're cutting back on quality. So the quality is going, and as the program keeps going, there's more and more cases of centers that are being caught providing poor quality. And it's poor quality in both not-for-profit and for-profit. So it doesn't matter what systems in place, is we have to have proper funding in place if we want to have the program. Without the proper funding, we will have lack of quality and lack of accessibility. Now, the $42 billion shortfall doesn't include creating spaces. So to create a space, both the NDP and the Liberal parties support not-for-profit and oppose the expansion of any for-profit centers. So if we went on the basis that the funding for new childcare centers for not-for-profit, and we need about 250,000 new spaces to meet the targets to get to that 60, to get to the target they have. The Alberta government right now is funding new spaces at $6,000 per space. So 250 times 6,000 is $1.5 billion in additional funding. So that's on top of the $42 billion shortfall. Is if you want to create those spaces, we need another $1.5 billion. If we want to reach the 67% that Quebec has across Canada, we will need $4.5 billion of funding for space creation. I don't know where all the money's coming from. And no party has put it in their platform of how they're going to fund a childcare system that is sustainable, no matter what model of ownership is. There is nobody out there that is providing sufficient funding to provide affordable, universal, quality, and inclusive childcare. We have the affordable right now. We're losing the quality, we're losing the accessibility, and we're losing the inclusivity. So from there, we need to take a look at the whole program and take a close look at what the parties are really proposing for funding of the program.
Thank you, Ray. I appreciate you just bringing those numbers to front and center. And again, people will get different numbers based on what level of quality they're measuring, and space in the center and rent and everything. We use numbers based in Alberta, based in our membership, just to give people a bit of background. And we do have that full report available on our ACE website as well, if anyone's interested in looking at those numbers from us. So let's get into why you guys are here tonight. We're going to go through the questions that we posed to each of the parties. Like Catherine said, we did send this out to every party, and we did get responses back from the Green Party and some of the other smaller parties as well. But just in respect of time and priority tonight, we're going to just talk about the Conservatives, the Liberals, and the NDP. I'm going to try and go through this as quickly as I can to make sure that we have time for questions and comments. But we can always come back to it if someone has another question. So these were the 7 questions that we posed. And the reason that we chose these questions is we felt that based on some of the issues we felt we were seeing across the board as operators nationally, these were issues that were front and center repeatedly over the last 3 years that we didn't feel had really been resolved, or that we had heard a plan forward. And we really wanted to make sure that parents and us as educators and stakeholders in this had some information moving forward. So, and these are shortened down versions of the answers. Obviously couldn't fit it all in one slide for you, but the first question we posed was around the funding structure. The question we asked was, what is your party's plan for the funding structure of the CWELC program? How will you ensure stable federal provincial funding to sustain it long term? Does your party support a parent-directed voucher/subsidy funding model? What we mean by a parent-directed subsidy funding model is a funding that follows the child model, similar to how most provincial low-income subsidy programs have been structured in the past. Like in Alberta, we had a directed subsidy program up until April 1st. I think before we continue, I'm not here tonight to debate which party's platform is better. You can visit me on social media if you want to know my personal beliefs on that. But tonight we're just here to provide the information and the answers we got, and we'll just leave it at that. That's up to you. You vote for you and your child, I think, at the end of the day. So the Conservatives came in and said that they would maintain but modify. I know there was a lot of posts saying that the Conservatives were going to take away affordable childcare from families. So I'm hoping we can clear that up tonight, because I'd hate for parents to think that was truth and when it's not. That they will maintain but modify the program. They intend to keep the $10 a day CWELC program commitment to the end of March 2026. So there wasn't a commitment from the Conservatives necessarily to go past that date. They're open to restructuring it with more flexibility, including options like the income-based funding or parent-directed supports to give families more choice. So this may follow more of a means-tested approach. So hopefully we could stretch the funding more under that kind of framework. The Liberals want to maintain a universal model. They strongly support the existing Liberal $10 a day universal childcare system. The platform pledged to maintain and expand the current funding structure. They rejected an income targeted voucher or means tested system in order to keep the fees low for all families. The universal component was really important in their answer back on this question. The NDP were fairly similar. They want to expand the universal system, so they fully support a universal program. The vow to expand it aggressively was the wording that was used. They're firmly against any move toward vouchers or income-based funding, insisting on a universal low fee model for all families rather than parent subsidies. Inclusion of the for-profit tax-paying side of childcare providers. So we did talk a little bit about this tonight. Brianna touched on her personal opinion around the different models. Our question directly was, what is your stance on including private, which is for-profit tax-paying childcare providers in the CWELC program, and what role do you see them playing in delivering affordable quality childcare? So the Conservatives came back with a high priority for parental choice, prioritizing parental choice and diverse childcare options. That would include all models of childcare, private, for-profit, home-based, and informal care providers in funding eligibility. They would not limit the support to public centers only. So again, the Conservatives mentioned the word flexible childcare in their answer, emphasizing options like home-based childcare. Day homes is what we call them in Alberta, for alternate schedules was really important. So they really wanted to see that the alternate schedules, parents working non-traditional hours, were supported. A focus on expanding public childcare was what the Liberals came back to us with. A focus on expanding public licensed childcare, maintaining a mixed delivery model. So mixed delivery is both sides, the for-profit, nonprofit. Supporting current licensed private providers that meet the $10 a day criteria would still remain eligible. Future growth would primarily be supported through nonprofit and public spaces, with a goal of building more of a public childcare system. The NDP came back with prioritizing childcare as a public service. Prioritizing childcare as a public service with centers expanding licensed nonprofit and public childcare spaces. Flexible care options like 24-hour care and overnight care would be considered within a broad public framework. So licensed operator expansion. We did touch a bit on this too in some of our stats earlier on. So what's your party's position on the current restrictions that limit expansion of licensed childcare operators under CWELC, and would you modify these rules to facilitate the creation of new childcare spaces? So if you're not familiar with this, most provinces under the CWELC agreement are not allowed to expand new for-profit private centers. The new expansion, the new spaces are only available to nonprofit public spaces. So that's where we're going with this question here. The Conservatives came back with an indirect expansion via flexibility. So only a moderate emphasis on directing, creating new spaces. They were really focusing the priority on giving parents flexibility. So they were talking about, rather than a heavy investment in space creation and creating new spaces, to utilize some of the other options in childcare, like home-based childcare, more flexible options that maybe aren't included in this program as much. Less inclined to set ambitious federal targets for new operators. Instead, they encourage diverse childcare arrangements, possibly incentivizing private and home-based operators to join CWELC. The Liberals continue aggressive space creation, so there really is that goal to meet those 250,000 new spaces, which is great. A strong commitment to growing that number of licensed publicly funded spaces nationwide. They vow to continue to create new childcare centers and spaces in nonprofit public centers. There's a lot of talk about partnerships with provinces. I know we've talked a lot with Liberal ministers around partnerships even with municipalities, which again is looking at expansion and meeting that goal of 250,000 new nonprofit spaces. Their goal really is to support every family with access to a space, universally accessible without means testing. The NDP are really focused on a rapid expansion plan, aggressively funding and facilitating new licensed spaces under CWELC, rapid growth of childcare capacity with substantial federal funding and policy support to help operators in the primarily nonprofit public side, opening centers and adding rooms. The goal is a dramatic increase in licensed providers participating in the $10 a day program. So I'm trying to go through this fast if I'm going too fast. The next one was fee reductions and sustainability. Ray talked about some of the costs associated with this. We asked what the approach the party would take to achieving the CWELC goal of a $10 a day childcare, and how they would ensure this affordability initiative is financially sustainable while maintaining quality and fair wages for educators. The Conservatives came back with low fees, but with conditions and fiscal caution. Plans to keep childcare fees low at $10 a day, yet they have signaled conditions that could affect universality or fee structure. So they have talked about scaling the fees, income testing it, means testing it, that would help to control the cost. They do voice concerns about the program's cost, preferring efficient use of funds over majority of or over major new spending. There's less pressure on the federal emphasis for boosting wages and standards. They put that more back onto the provinces to implement better wages and different regulations for quality. The Liberals were focused on a universal $10 a day program, shared funding responsibility that's shared between the provinces and the federal government. So they commit to permanently $10 a day or lower, if possible, fees for all families, which would be amazing for families. Pledge to secure the universal fee reduction long term, and are comfortable with the high level of current federal funding, which is listed as $9 billion annually on the report that we got back, as an ongoing cost. To ensure quality and sustainability, they plan to include working with provinces on workforce improvements through though there is no specified workforce strategy that was provided to us. Improving access and reducing wait lists. So this has been, I think, probably the biggest challenge with this program, the biggest one in the media for sure. We asked what specific steps they would take to improve childcare access and reduce the growing wait list under the CWELC program, how they would increase the number of licensed childcare spaces, as well as the workforce of early childhood educators to meet rising demands from families. The Conservative government came back with choice over waitlist targets. So prioritizing parental choice over federal waitlist targets, promoting diverse childcare options like home-based childcare, day homes, to meet the demand rather than funding new licensed spaces. They favor limited federal role in workforce development, leaving ECE hiring and wages to provinces and a market without major wage supports. So they're putting it back onto the provinces as far as the wages go, and the workforce strategy. The Liberals mentioned a collaborate and grow access. The plan is to reduce waitlists by continuing CWELC expansion and investing in ECE workforce alongside provinces. They promised thousands more affordable licensed spaces and incremental improvements in ECE wages and recruitment, gradually increasing childcare availability and accessibility. The NDP were an all hands on deck model of expansion, rapidly expand childcare capacity with aggressive funding to quickly create licensed spaces and reduce wait lists, implementing a robust ECE workforce plan with higher wages, better benefits, and training incentives to attract educators, aiming to eliminate wait lists and ensure broad access to quality care. So we asked, and I think Catherine talked about kind of the report card of CWELC. We did ask the parties what their assessment of how the CWELC program has performed since its implementation, what successes and challenges would inform any changes or improvements your party would make if elected. So the Conservatives felt that it wasn't delivering as promised. Polyev argued the $10 a day program had failed to fully materialize for families. He pointed out that we don't have a $10 a day. It doesn't exist right now for many Canadians, highlighting that a large portion of parents still can't access $10 a day spots. The Conservatives see the rollout as ineffective, citing limited availability and persistent waitlists as evidence that CWELC isn't meeting its goals. The Liberal Party felt that this was saving families money, which it absolutely is, and that's the most wonderful part about this program. The CWELC is a clear success so far because of this money saving for families. They note that Canadian families are saving up to $14,000 per child per year thanks to a $10 a day childcare. The Liberal view is that the program is delivering significant financial relief to parents. Any challenges like waitlists or workforce shortages are acknowledged but framed as growing pains. The NDP, they feel like this helped on affordability, but the access is lagging. They recognize the positive impact on affordability, but emphasize the major gaps remaining in access. NDP MP Leah Gazan put it that working parents need more available, affordable childcare spaces, and that was a fact. So that reflected the NDP view that the CWELC is a good policy, but lagging on access for sure. We did ask each party what the long-term vision for national childcare was. What is their party's long-term vision for early learning and childcare in Canada, and how would you build on it or adjust the CWELC program under your leadership to achieve that vision? So the Conservatives came back with a flexible, sustainable system. They envision a flexible, financially streamlined national childcare program. They would maintain the $10 a day childcare in principle, reshaping it to accommodate diverse needs. So different care models like we talked about, and incomes, and control costs. This would involve a hybrid funding model with low fees, income-based subsidies, or vouchers for efficiency and choice, prioritizing a parent-centered system with broad eligibility, emphasizing choice and sustainability over uniform expansion. The Liberal government promised a permanent universal program. They see the $10 a day childcare as a permanent pillar of Canada's social policy, much like public education, public school. Long-term vision is to fully entrench a universal, affordable childcare system across the country. This includes continuous expansion of spaces until childcare is effectively guaranteed for all who want it and need it, and ongoing federal funding to keep fees low. The NDP have a similar universal public system approach. They envision childcare as a universal public service with spaces for all families and greater affordability, potentially free for those who need it. Supported by permanent increased federal funding and public management, the NDP's vision enhanced the $10 a day program, improving access, quality, and affordability, aiming for childcare as accessible as elementary school with well-paid educators and high national standards. All right, whew, that was a mouthful. So I think, with that being said, I'm not here to share my own personal views on any of those platforms, but I really wanted to just go through it and give you all the three parties and what their responses were so that you could make your own decision based on what matters to you and what your vision of childcare is for your family. We can open it up for questions. I'd like to keep the questions around, policy questions, things that we can answer without going into a debate about our views on whether a conservative government or a liberal government would do it better, or whether this program has failed or is a success. Let's just keep it friendly and as nonpartisan as we can tonight. So with that being said, if you would like to put your hand up, we can unmute you, and you're welcome to ask any of our panelists a question or just put a question out.
There's a hand up there. Jay has a hand up.
Okay. I would need, I think, Laura to unmute if you could, Laura.
Yes, hello. Good evening.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, and you?
Good,
Yes,
thank
so
you.
yeah, so my name is Jihan, and I run a licensed daycare in Ottawa, and I am not alone, but maybe we are 12 daycares in the same agency, and we have seen our contract canceled because there's no more funding, and so I would love to know, like, um, do you think there's something to do with any, like, in this situation with any government, like, okay, because they are aware that a lot of daycares lost their funding because of lack of because there's no more funding. So is any government have any plan for those daycares, or no one talk about that?
I did not receive anything in any of the information that we've been gathering over the last month, maybe 6 weeks, that would say that anyone's promised more funding at this point, unfortunately.
Oh, really?
And
Okay. So
yeah,
no government.
I wish I had something for you, but I don't want to go into tonight into like what my thoughts are on what should be done for you, but just keep it on the level of what information we have tonight around the election and the campaign. And I have not gathered any information that would suggest there's going to be more funding handed out to centers that have lost funding.
It's not really about more funding. It's about to save some already opened daycares, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who have to close because there's decrease on the funding.
Okay.
This is more the situation. So I was like, there's maybe few hundred families who are on the same situation. So I never hear anything about that, like a government who is talking about this problem. It looks like it's very silent, like no one is talking about that.
That's, if I can chime in here, that is why Alberta and Ontario wrote letters to the minister saying that there isn't enough funding in the system. That's what I was saying, is there isn't enough funding in the system. And unfortunately, centers like yours, because there isn't enough funding to go around, places were cut out of the funding.
Yeah.
In the meantime, they're spending money to create new spaces somewhere else. So
yes, I don't understand. This is what I don't understand. Like,
yeah,
I see new spaces, but they cut some spaces. So, and for example, here in Ottawa, I see new spaces opening and some closed. So where are we going? Like, which part? Like, is Liberal talking about that? Conservative talk about that? Or no one?
Nobody.
No, nobody's talking about that. Peter John did talk about just the fact that there's like spaces being lost. As much as we're creating new spaces, that there are spaces being lost. We as an association have had many conversations and webinars around the challenges of different models of childcare, like preschools and day homes, who are not able to compete with full-time daycare and closing across the country too. So I like to say that there's a lot of unintended consequences when policy rolls out like this, and we would love to have you back at one of our regular kind of ACE webinars where we can really get into like what we should be doing to advocate for centers like yours. But unfortunately tonight, I think that's all that we can.
But I think it's a good question to ask to the
It's a great question. Yeah,
like it's not just about me. A lot of home daycares, and maybe some in Toronto, there is maybe 2 centers. They have to close because they said, okay, they can no longer have funding. It's really concerning because parents they cannot imagine that something like that can happen from the government. So I was surprised there's no question about that today.
Well, you know what? We picked questions that I guess we knew we would get answers to, or hoped we would get answers to. I honestly, my feeling is that likely the leaders of those parties wouldn't even be equipped to answer your question, unfortunately.
Yes,
Very
right,
few politicians that we have come across in 3 years of doing this have any solid understanding of this program and its rollout. And oftentimes we spend a lot of time informing them before we can even have an open dialogue about what CWELC looks like. So I would love to talk to you more about this if you want to stay connected with ACE, but I'm going to
Sure.
move on just to the next question because
Sure. Yeah, go
yeah,
go
but
ahead. Yeah, no worries.
we
Thank you very
feel
much. Yeah.
absolutely feel what you're saying, and we have a lot of members that have shared very similar situations to what
Oh,
you're
really? Yeah.
explaining tonight. Yeah.
Okay.
So I can
Okay.
put the ACE
Thank you.
email
Perfect. Thank
in
you.
the chat
Thank you.
for you. Yeah, just stay in touch and hopefully we can help you in a different way. But the next hand up I have is Alex.
Hi, everyone. It's Alex from the chat. So I understand that you're trying to not be partisan and provide any like recommendations over which party to vote for, but I feel like that's a little bit misleading because we were directed to come here to get all the information we needed to know. So I think it's important for the parents here to understand where ACE sits on which party they think people should be voting for, especially since we've had speakers here tonight that have had like ties to faith-based institutions. The Fraser Institute was cited in a number of the slides earlier. I just think it's important for the transparency.
Sure. I mean, we each have our own views. Like I said, I'm a private operator. I operate a preschool. I have very strong views on how this has impacted my center and the families and community that I'm in. Catherine has a different style of program, and Ray runs two totally different models that are treated differently under this program. So we're not here tonight to tell you what ACE thinks. If you've followed ACE at all, you'll know that we support affordable childcare 100%, but we absolutely advocate for an equitable system. We advocate for parental choice. If you've been on the ACE website, you'll know that we have a petition to cut the federal strings of this program and give the money to the provinces in an envelope form. So I think that it's not hard to find information on what kind of things that ACE supports, and you could go back through the different policy platforms from each of the parties and see. But I'm not going to tell you tonight one way to vote or not. We're not that kind of association.
Totally.
You're a parent.
I'm a parent, but I've interacted with ACE on a Facebook page called Childcare Waitlist Awareness, and whenever I've actually like posted things about how the system should be better funded and childcare should be affordable, I tend to get smacked down by certain members of ACE in the comment section, and I just I feel that's why it's important that people here understand where ACE actually stands. Like, are you advocating for the Conservatives or not?
No, we're not advocating for the Conservatives. We're actually not funded by any party or any government.
You support the expansion of CWEL then, correct?
We support an expansion of CWELC if it's accessible for families, if it's adequately funded, if it's equitable. We obviously want to see all forms of childcare and choice under this program. So absolutely, we do not want to take CWELC away by any means, but we do want to ensure that it actually represents the families that need it and the families that we serve as a collective association. But I honestly, I appreciate your perspective here tonight, and I've appreciated your back and forth on Facebook with me personally. I like that there's so many different visions of what childcare should be across the country, and you're a parent. So, I mean, what are you voting for in this? And what was important to you as a parent with children in childcare when you cast your vote? I'd like to hear from you, but that's why we're here tonight, is to hear from parents. So.
Okay, well, I'll let the other people ask questions. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for bringing that up tonight. Our next question, I have Pinky. You're up. Your turn.
Pinky, you just have to unmute yourself if you're if you're ready there.
We can go on to the next. Is there any other hands up? Anybody else who wants to jump in? Jihan, did you have your hand up again? Did you want to say something else?
Yes, it's the same person. But
Hi.
you know, hi again. You know, when the government is, when I see like everything you are showing to us today, thank you very much for that. But if you can see how the childcare is right now, and the Liberal right now are making a nice promises and conserve, you know, but it's a big mess right now on the childcare. So making promise, they have to start doing that right now, not, you know what I mean? So it's hard to trust what you are telling us today about the Liberal. The only thing I want to say.
I am not telling you to trust any party,
Yes.
or that we
No, I
trust
know,
any
I
of
know.
them.
It's just a
But
comment. Yes,
yeah,
it's just a
no,
comment because you receive answer for them, but it's nice to to read that. But when you are working on the childcare, you can see that it's not working how they are promising. It's just a
Yeah.
comment from me. Yeah.
Yeah, we agree with you. We're on the floor. I understand wholeheartedly. I'm sitting at a place where I have had the reserves for my program be depleted. The way that parents in our chat right here are saying, what do you mean $10 a day? Like my numbers have gone way up. So you're depleting your savings. The operators are depleting their savings as well. I can name you off 10 people that have lost their businesses. The women that work in this $10 a day program, predominantly women who are the staff, who are the operators. It's not those women that this program helps. It's supposed to be all women are helped by this and they're in the workforce. It's just like it's in brackets, like, well, not, I live this too. I agree with you. I am very frightened for where my personal program is going to end up as far as where am I going to end up with a room that's got electricity and heat and a box of crayons, and that's what I'm going to say is high quality, because it's getting very frightening as far as the numbers being insufficient, right?
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
So we commiserate with you. I have compassion for your perspective. Yeah,
absolutely.
there's got to be changes.
We're all
Like
operators, so we all have different perspectives and have experienced different things over the past 3 years of implementing this. And again, another ACE meeting anytime. We're happy to share our own personal perspectives and like really get into like the spiciness of how we feel about all of the things associated with this. But tonight we're really trying hard to not do that, to stay above the partisan line and just give parents an open platform and make sure that every parent, regardless if you agree with us or not, leaves feeling supported and that you've had your questions answered. So I'll move on to, is it David? Your hand is up. You're next, number 2.
Yeah, so I guess my question is around choice. Like, maybe I'll just describe a little about
Sure.
me. I have a kid. We were on lots of wait lists. I'm in the GTA. We eventually did get in. We were on, a whole bunch of wait lists. We eventually did get in. And some people that we know who were parents, like we were at a for-profit center for a bit, and then we moved, not partly because we just had a change in our leave provision. So we were at a for-profit place for like a couple of months, and then on leave again, and then kid back into a non-for-profit, right? We were just happy to land anywhere. We ended up getting into a daycare that we really, really like, not-for-profit, whatever. But we know people that had struggled, right? And some people, like a lot of people, eventually got into places that they wanted to get in, not got a spot, but for a lot of people, it's like nerve-wracking, I think, from a parent perspective. Anyways, so like the lack of spaces and lack of, I think, maybe money, and so I'm in Ontario, so it's like provincial money going into this It's like I didn't really pay that much a couple of years ago. I'm not paying that much attention to childcare. As a parent, I am paying attention now because all these things are happening. So I'm seeing the Ford government, for instance, is not really ponying up the money on the other end, right? This is supposed to be it's like federal money, but then provincials are supposed to be also kicking in money. And what ended up happening was the Ford government took money and was supposed to spend on childcare and spent it on other stuff. Not great. Anyways, so I think it's kind of like the amount of spaces that we need are not there yet, hopefully. But like in principle, like the Seawilk stuff is good, like spending lots of money. I heard one of the panelists say, oh, we're spending all this money on childcare. And it's like, I actually disagree. Like we should be spending this. This is a good investment, right? It's imperfect right now, but I think ultimately a good investment for our communities, right? And I can see that in my personal bills. Like we went down to we were at $46, I think, when we started, or $48, and now down to 22. That's transformative. Potentially March of next year down to 10. That's huge. And that money is like money that I'm not like Scrooge McDuck and just sitting on it in a big vault of cash. Like I'm spending that money on other things, like saving up maybe to buy a home or spend on other things in the local economy. That's positive. So very good. But I just want to say about the choice stuff that I just find like when I look at the dental care program, for instance, it's like means tested. So only like 1 million people qualify, whatever. And it's good. Everyone should have dental care. But when you make things means tested, it just means that the quality is not there and that those programs don't get really defended. And so it's like why we have, I think, a universal public school system that everyone can have access to is that we're all invested in it. Rich kids, middle class kids, poor kids go to those schools, not 100%, but vast majority. And that means that we're all invested in that stuff and that we care about it as a community. Same thing with our healthcare program. So I kind of just feel like I want us to move to a universal program because I know that works. When we have means tested programs, like we have means testing on social assistance, or we have means testing on our dental care, those ultimately will always fail politically and the viability of those programs. So I just feel like I've come around to understanding and seeing childcare as something that should be it's like our school system. Like it basically leads into our school system. Now, obviously it's a patchwork model of delivery, and I don't know, maybe there's a lot of operators here. I'm not an operator, but my point is that we should see that as affordability, and investing money, like billions and billions of dollars, is not a bad thing. And I don't know where ACE stands on that, whether they, like you folks, support Seawilk but want to see kind of a more means tested model or a voucher system model, which I think is never going to work. Or you don't support spending taxpayer money on childcare stuff, which then I don't know what we do about that. But my point is, I just feel like I've seen it work. Like the fee reductions are transformative. I want more people to have access to that, and I want more government funding in those spaces.
Can I interrupt you just for a minute? When you say that, so if everybody pays the same rate and a person is making $25,000 a year or $30,000 a year, and a family's making $500,000 a year. So that money that you're paying for childcare for the person who's making $500,000 a year, they get 50%, they're paying a marginal tax rate of around 50%, depending on which province you're in. So if they're spending $1,000 on childcare, it's only costing them $500 out of pocket. The family that is making $25,000 a year is at a 25% tax bracket. So out of pocket, they're actually paying $750 out of their own pocket. So it's actually costing the lower income earners more money than it is for the highest income earners that we have. So just because it's equal doesn't make it equitable. And that's why.
Yeah, except here's the one logic problem with that is that when I'm paying $10 a day in childcare, that's way reduced to what I was paying if I'm a low income earner or had access to.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it's not political. No means tested program has ever been politically viable in terms of quality and service delivery and access and expansion. It's why we have not means tested public schools. It's why we have not means tested healthcare, and countries and places in the world that have done means tested like school voucher models like Florida or Medicaid, for instance, in the US, is actually it's just not workable. Millions of people are left out. Those are not, it's not a viable program, like it's not a viable path to create access, affordability. And yes, like maybe you make that up on earnings, like on higher taxes on the rich. I don't know. I think if that's the conclusion you're coming at, then I agree with you. But my point, though, is that a model that sort of says everyone can opt out who's rich means that the program can never actually be defended and delivered for everybody. And what ultimately ends up happening is what happens with OW, ODSP, the dental care program, and any other kinds of means tested program is that it gets killed because there's no universal buy-in and delivery of that model.
So the dental plan, if my employer pays my dental plan, I don't have access to it. And if you don't have somebody that has a dental plan, you do have access to it. That's kind of mean testing in the dental plan. All I'm saying.
Yes, but my like think about like public schools. We all pay into the public school system. Rich kids go to public school.
Yes.
Are you saying rich kids shouldn't go to public school?
No.
Or they shouldn't be funded? You know what I mean? Like they all go to public school. Rich people walk in and they go to the hospital. They get treated. They have a healthcare. They pay nothing. You know what I mean? Should we means test that? That's a sure way to kill healthcare for everyone. If we just have a means test that only healthcare for the poor means that program gets defunded, degraded, and attacked politically.
I guess my question would be, regardless of like whether you want to see it means tested or not, if we continue with the universal program, which if you look at what Alberta has done for April 1st with our new agreement, we now have a flat rate for all families. Everybody, regardless of income here, pays $15 a day to a maximum of $326.50 per child for full-time daycare. That's the new Alberta model. So my question would be, is that now in Alberta, and I think across the board, if we start getting to $10 a day, we're going to be receiving government funding for those childcare spaces of about 85%, 90% of the actual cost of it. How are we funding this as a country? That's always been my question. Like, I'm not a numbers person, but I just put that out to parents when they're asking about the means tested, because I can understand what you're saying. And I think that it's fantastic. Like I'm a parent as well, and I can see the savings in my bank account and on my friends' bank accounts from this program. That it's amazing what it is doing for people. But how do we fund it long term? Because the money's not there, and I mean our lives are super unaffordable right now. So that would be my question back to you.
The money could be there, though. Like when you say the money's not there, just like budgets are a choice.
No,
you know
but
what I mean?
we've
Are we
only
going to spend? Are we going to be
created.
doubling our military budget next year, or are we going to spend it on childcare? Are we
So
going to spend
I'll tell you
more money on border security or childcare? Like these budgets
Those
are
things that
choices,
you'll
right?
have
Do
to
we
decide.
raise our corporate tax rate or do we lower it? Do we raise like as the other? I think Ray is your name, was talking about we should raise taxes on the rich. I agree with you, Ray. Should we do that or not? And so those are choices that we should make, and all of us can decide
but
where
this
we
is not
fall
really
on
how
that. But I don't think that there's just sort of a set standard of like, here's the money, because budgets are about political choices, priorities, and what we're investing in and what we're not investing in.
I don't think any of us here are like going to be presenting a budget to any party. That's not our place. I think that, you know, the meetings that we've had with politicians, and I'll say in Alberta, one of the most recent ones we had with our minister here was that if they funded this program provincially at the level required under the federal agreement and they met the spaces that they needed for their agreement, the Alberta government would be spending a whole third of the full provincial budget on this childcare program. That would mean that they would have to give up schools, roads, hospital improvements because there's not enough money in the provincial budget to fund this program. I'm not going to argue with you about what they should do with the budget to get the money. I'm just saying that's the reality of this program. And you as a parent, I mean, you saw the platform. The NDP want to give this to everybody aggressively, even free. The Liberals have a platform, and so do the Conservatives. I would say vote based on what you think you can afford as a taxpayer to continue funding. We are just here to present the numbers. I personally think a means-tested approach is something that is more reasonable, but we're not here to tell you like what to do. That's on you. And I appreciate everything you're saying because I know that, public school system. I've worked in public schools. Catherine works in a public school, so yeah, we're well aware. And I appreciate your question and your input. I'm not wanting to cut you off or be disrespectful, but it's already, we're past our time, and I do know that there's 2 or 3 other hands up, and I want to make sure we get to them. We have about 10 minutes left. So our contact is in the chat. If you want to continue and you have other questions or something, please email us or reach out. But the next question, I'm going to pass it on to Morna. Your hand is number 2, I think.
Thanks so much, Crystal, and thanks to all of you for putting on the webinar. I have a very specific question that I raised in the chat, but I don't think I got an answer. When you were going through the information about the various party platforms, it was incredibly exhaustive. And I'm actually really surprised by that because those 4 parties have all released their platforms. The Conservative Party mentions childcare only once, very briefly, alongside healthcare. And the Liberals is more exhaustive. The NDP has nothing in the platform on childcare. So I just want to understand your methodology. Did you do a questionnaire and did you get all of those extensive answers directly from the parties in response to a questionnaire? Or are you pulling together various things that have been said at various times and kind of compiling them to present a picture of what the parties are saying? And if it is a questionnaire, could you please share on your website the questionnaire and all those detailed answers?
Sure. So it's kind of a patchwork. We did send a questionnaire out, which are the questions that I read out to you in each of the platforms. We've received complete questionnaires from some parties. We received part, not quite a full answer. We did go back and go through the recently released election platforms for information. We reached out to different staffers that we have in contact with and connections in each party to ask for clarification. And we did go back through some of the more current, comments and different policies that have been, especially around the extensions, what the intention was around the extension. So it's definitely a patchwork, and I can put the questions up for you and our slideshow. This will all be available for people, but I won't be sharing like all of my notes and everything on that. But
okay, thanks for that clarification, because I just want to say it did sound in your presentation that you were quoting, in fact, or giving very specific information from the parties. And a lot of it was completely new to me, and I'm pretty well informed about what the various party positions are. So it sounds to me it's more of an analysis and a compilation of what you understand the parties to be saying.
It's not my understanding of what they were saying.
I mean you personally. Sorry, yeah, I didn't mean it personally. I meant your organization.
It's not an interpretation. It is, gathered data from different sources, from the parties directly. And by no means was it meant to be biased or sway in any direction. We're, again, a bunch of volunteers who are firsthand on the floor with children all day and trying to make sure that we provide as much information as unpaid, ungovernment funded volunteers who work with kids all day to make sure that parents have different levels of information. But no, it's definitely not my interpretation. I'm not a policy expert, but lots of information and hours went into gathering it to make sure it was available to you. So
Thank you.
you're welcome. I think we have, is there any, Brianna, I know you had your hand up forever, and I'm sorry. Did you want to say something? Or did you have a question?
No, actually, it wasn't a question. I was just,
Okay.
I wanted to thank David for his question. But I'd say from my experience, I didn't necessarily agree with the premise about not being invested unless we're all paying the same. Like my own experience, fees have gone down for me, which is great, but I could afford the childcare, and I'm seeing fellow parents that are struggling now because when they did have the subsidy, it really helped them out, so they're paying more. So like kind of we're all like all of us. Sorry, so let me back up. So like my fee was reduced, but our daycare center, we almost lost our lunch lady because the government funding doesn't include their version doesn't include, homemade meals. And so in Alberta, at least, so I'm not sure about all the provinces, but centers can charge supplementary fees for supplementary optional services. And so it was a kind of a question of, it had to be optional though. So would enough people sign on to carry on with lunches? And thankfully we did. So like, I'm still happy, but I would have been really unhappy if I was paying less, but I suddenly had to make lunches every day. Like that's just more stress for me. And so, but then I also I fear, like we want quality and we want equity. Now these parents that are paying more, they're also paying more now for lunches, when before they were paying less and all the kids were getting the same food. But now for the parents that are paying actually more with the or in Alberta, it's $15 a day daycare right now. You're gonna have some kids sitting eating their lunch from home and their friend next to them is having a different lunch. Like that's just, that to me, I guess I disagree with the premise that like we all should be paying the same. Like I guess I just disagree with that premise that we're not invested. And I'm not super wealthy, but I know for super wealthy, like they will just opt out. Like they're not gonna stay invested. They will get a nanny or they will stay home. Like, that's just, I just wanted to kind of share my thoughts there, but I understand the ideology, and I think he phrased it quite well. So I appreciate that being inserted into the discussion.
Yeah, I think, someone just mentioned that the situation in Alberta is unique, which it is. We just have a brand new agreement that's rolled out here and a new system. I think I know that it's late in Ontario for our people that are joining us across the country. And I know we promised this to be an hour and we're already 45 minutes over. So I appreciate that there's more conversations to have and questions there, but I'm going to wrap it up. I really am very grateful. I'm sweating a little bit tonight, and I appreciate that because I think that it's good to have these conversations. And I know in the last 3 years, I've attended a lot of webinars, and there's not a lot of like grit and conversation around this program. And childcare is so important, and our children deserve real conversations and differences of opinion, and sharing different facts and different realities and truths, because we're all living in different worlds across the country and in our own childcare centers and whatever we do. But I think that this has been a very wonderful evening. I hope that if you got nothing else from this, we gave you something to think about and some honest conversation. And I just want to thank our panelists who came tonight and gifted us with your time and your expertise and your perspective on such different types of childcare, from your perspective as a mom to someone like Peter John, who's writing policy for family, and Catherine and Ray for your time again with us at ACE. I again really appreciate the chat tonight and everyone who attended, and I hope that you go Monday and vote from a really informed place, and that if you're voting because you have children in childcare, that you feel like you know which party to vote for, and that you understand things that matter for you and your children in childcare in the future. So thank you all for a wonderful evening, and we will share this recording on our website. And if you want to join ACE, we will make sure that the website is available to you. I think it was in the chat. And yeah, again, have a great night, and thank you all for your time, and good luck voting on Monday.